I'm going to switch it up. I brought a backup outfit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's my Superman.
Dun, 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 dun.
This is all going to be on the outtakes.
Dun, 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 dun.
Welcome to the Old Fashioned Real Estate Show, where hosts Brian Leverage and Jeffrey Holst for our old fashioned real estate advice.
Welcome to the Old Fashioned Real Estate Show. My name is Jeffrey Holst, and this is
Brian Leverage.
Hey, Brian. How's it going today?
It's going good, Jeff. How about yourself?
Excellent. I never have bad days, as you probably know.
I do.
I know you do.
No, I meant I know you don't have bad days.
No, and I know you know that.
Right. I wasn't trying to say I do have bad days. That's kind of how it sounded.
You do actually have bad days.
Well, I'm starting to have one now.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We might actually need to start over. Yeah. In case we don't start over, what is the topic of the show today?
I don't know. I think we should talk about construction, though.
Construction.
Yeah.
You know, I've never done that. I've never been a builder, but I do think you know a little bit about building. So if you want to talk about it, we can do that.
Sure.
What do you guys think?
Yay!
Cameron, that's when you're supposed to clap and cheer. The live studio.
We'll dub that sound in later.
The live studio audience. All right. So the topic for the show today is how to decide if you're going to build or if it's a good time to build. And we're going to focus, I think, mostly on residential, but we'll talk briefly about commercial as well. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Cool. So, Brian, is today a good day to build?
Today is, yes.
Today is.
Tomorrow should be as well.
Excellent. So, in all fairness, though, you've been building houses in Chattanooga and the Chattanooga surrounding area for the last several years.
Yeah.
Including a subdivision, which I think we had a video about it before where we walked through one of those new construction houses. Do you think that if you were going to do that project now, you would start it today?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you make that determination?
Well, overall, it's construction boils down to a couple different inputs which are constant, right? You have the value of the land, which is typically, as a builder, you are buying finished lots that you essentially just have to go to the building office and get a permit on, and you can start construction.
Let me stop you for 1 second there. So by finished lots, you're talking about
streets are in, sidewalk, well, maybe not the sidewalk, but your utilities are at the curb and everything. They're ready for you to tap into. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
So it's all there, and you will typically, as a builder, you will pay a premium for a finished lot compared to raw land that you yourself would have to develop, because there's a lot more risk and expense with that, right?
So you're making a distinction between a developer and a builder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
And it becomes a factor of, as a builder, you kind of look at inventory in a market, and you start generally looking at a price per foot number. Right. And so within submarkets, those things are pretty easy to track, right? Like,
sure.
You know, if homes start approaching, your cost to build, you can generally, and this is existing inventory, mind you, not new construction per se. But as those numbers, as that delta basically shrinks between the two, it becomes more and more favorable towards new construction, because buyers are willing to pay a premium, much like with cars, right? They'll pay a lot more for a new car than they will.
Right. The never lived in house is worth more than the lived in house.
Yes.
All right. So what kind of premium do you normally think about that people are? I mean, or is there a way to track this, I guess?
Typically, the way I'll look at it is that whatever my lot cost is as a builder, I want to make a X percentage of profit. So if the lot is $40,000 hypothetically, after I've taken into account my financing costs, if I'm financing the construction and other holding costs, etc., I want to make at least a 50% return on my money.
All right, 50% of the lot cost.
Mm-hmm.
Not 50% of the total project cost.
Correct. That would be very difficult to do.
Well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming if you got the lots really cheap, you'd probably need to make more than 50%. Like if you got a $40,000 lot for $10,000, you would want to make more than $5,000 on that deal.
Yeah, I wouldn't build. Yeah.
It wouldn't be worth the effort.
Well, and that sort of goes into the next topic related, is that you also want to look at price points, right? Like, so within housing, there's your buyers, they're all over the place, right?
Sure.
Like, so the closer you can be to the median, which is really difficult to do in new construction these days because development costs are significant. So your finished lot costs are substantially more than they were selling for even 5 years ago.
What's so while we're on that, so like raw land versus finished lots, like just as a general rule, like what is the cost? Like how much more are the finished lots?
Well, it depends on what kind of development you're purchasing in. There's, lots that are connected to city sewer or some type of public utility sewer system. Those will be smaller lots because there's a sewer tap connection, right?
They don't
Whereas
need
if you're on septic in a state like Tennessee, you're required to have 2 septic fields. So those are typically at a minimum about half-acre lots. So within an acre, you're not even getting 2 finished lots.
It depends a lot on the area and what the local. A big part of it is the sewage connections, obviously. But it's also going to depend on what the land looks like. Whether it needs to be graded, stuff like that, I'm guessing.
Yes, exactly. The flatter, the better, right? A house that can be built on a slab is going to have a cheaper foundation than one that's on a raised foundation of mortar or stem walls or something like that.
So why don't you take us through the process? So when you're looking at a finished lot, so you've got a lot, you're looking at it, you like the price point. The next thing you're doing, I think you're saying, is you're looking at the average prices in the area. And a certain amount per square foot, I'm guessing, on what it's going to cost to build it. What is the next thing that you think about? Like, what do you do? So you know the square footage, what you want to, what it's going to cost you per square foot to build. How are you deciding then what to do with this lot?
Well, you're looking at what and it's as much artwork, which is another way of saying guesswork to some extent, as it is science. You want to predict what your resale price is going to be, right? Which I think you were kind of touching on to some degree, but that is oftentimes speculative because if you're going into an area where there isn't a lot of other new construction and there haven't been a lot of recent sales, then it's at least 50% guesswork in those instances.
You're kind of making the market. Whatever you can sell it for is what it sells for.
And you also need to look at too is like what are other builders selling for, sort of what price points. I, as a builder, I like to be in price points where I have as little competition as possible. That isn't always easy to do.
So it'd be really easy to do. Just price it for $20 billion and there'll be no competition.
And no buyers.
So you also want buyers. So less competition, but you still want buyers.
That is how we make our money at the end of the day. You do need somebody to come and pay you for it.
Right. So, and of course there are different strategies for different builders. You've got people like Brian. I think it's fair to say you're trying to build near the median price point or thereabouts. So in Chattanooga, that might be like a $200,000 house, something like that. Yeah. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but something in that range is what your target is. But then you have other people that are building, lakefront property, $1 million houses. There are people like Frank McKinney, the author, and who makes $15 million houses.
Thanks for liking our show.
Yeah, we appreciate that. That's why we decided to do a shout out for you right now, because he liked our Facebook page today, which, by the way, if you, the viewer, have not liked our Facebook page, you should go do that. It's Old Fashioned Real Estate.
No, it's true that there are price builders. Some builders have certain niches. They like to do high-end homes and sell to that kind of a clientele, and they typically have a name and reputation that follows them in those types of price points. Then you have other, sort of national home builders, as like a D.R. Horton, to give you one example, who also builds here in Chattanooga, and they're building homes at a much lower price point on a cost per square foot basis because they know that essentially they're about the only one in town doing that. And so they have a niche that almost no one else
targeting
is
a different market.
Yeah, they're targeting your entry-level buyer for new construction, which is going to be in that low to mid twos out here.
Sure. So what you're saying is, I think, that it's a little bit of an art, and it's something that you can only learn to do if you do it.
That is true.
So
and it's also cyclical. You're
Right.
not going to do it if we get into a market correction or decline where prices drop and then kind of stabilize. You're going to see construction starts pretty much fall off a cliff at that point.
Of course, that's exactly what we talked about in our market cycle episode, which you can check out right there. I think it's episode 13, might be 14. It's one of those. But the point is, people start building, and at some point, demand goes away, and they have to stop building. So here's a question for you, just kind of thinking about that. When you're looking at a property and you're thinking about the market cycle and you're thinking about what you can sell it for, how long do you really think it takes you from when you decide to build to when you actually are ready to sell? Like, what is that period?
Usually about 12 months or less, typically. And once you've gone in, a lot of builders are not just buying one lot in one neighborhood and building one house. There are economies of scale to buying multiple lots and then phasing it in. Like ideally you're doing say 3 to 4 at a time because your foundation guys start with one and then move down. And
of course you see this all over the place. Almost every neighborhood, there's a whole bunch of similar houses. There might be 3, 4 different house designs, but if you drive down the street and you watch, there's 4 of this house, 5 of that house. And it's because the same builders are actually building the whole neighborhood or a significant portion of that.
And they may have, some floor plans are certainly more popular than others, so the demand for one might be higher than another. That all comes into play. But, generally once you've gone into a neighborhood and you've established that it's going to work for you and you've bought the dirt, your construction, and again, this is variable, certain parts of the country, it's going to take longer based on weather, regulations, etc. But, typically you can build a house start to finish in about 6 months, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending also on the size and so forth. And then a lot of times I know that I personally don't market my houses until they're finished. And again, that's variable. Some builders list them before they've even put the foundation in the ground. However, there's pros and cons to doing that. I personally like to list them once they're done because I don't like dealing with change orders, right? Which any potential buyer may want different paint color, cabinet color, hardwoods in the bedrooms versus carpet. There's all these.
Well, there's an argument for your strategy, I think, but there's also an argument that people might pay more to get the house that they want.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking essentially building a spec home. You have it ready to go, and then you're just listing it.
Yeah.
Versus building a fully customized home for a person. Which those are two completely different strategies.
And a custom is most financial institutions will tell you that that's a lower risk because you already have an end builder lined up, end buyer, excuse me. And a lot of times that end buyer is giving you a substantial amount of non-refundable earnest money so that if they default, you still keep that. So
it seems like a lower risk to me to build a custom home. I think that's true. But I think that it also is less of an investment and more of a business, right?
Yes.
You're basically being a contractor writ large. You're general contracting the construction of a house at that point for someone else.
Well, and with spec construction, and I would say really just about any new construction, I mean, it's taxed as an active trader.
It is, regardless, and I mean, that's outside the scope of this particular video. But all right, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to wrap up because we're getting long here. But if someone is interested in starting out as a builder, maybe they're a drywaller or a contractor of some kind, so they have a little bit of knowledge, and they really want to get into home building. What advice would you give that person?
Keep doing what you're doing. That's learning just one of the trades and then trying to go build a whole house on your own, whether it be on spec or something, is really risky. I think you need to have a pretty good understanding of construction from a builder's perspective. Okay, there's other ways of being successful in it. You can partner with a contractor or somebody who's very knowledgeable about the construction piece of this, and you can be the finance person on that.
What about somebody like me, right? I've never built anything.
Yeah.
But what if I said to you, Brian, I want to start building new houses? What would you tell me?
I would say just write me a check.
Just write you a
take
check.
care of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I would partner with you if I was going to build new houses because I would want your expertise. And I think that's probably the correct answer. Not necessarily partner with Brian Leverage, but find someone who is doing it already and learn from them. And I think that's the trick to learning any new skill. And I think that's why you're watching our show, because you know that we're imparting valuable knowledge each and every other week.
Yeah.
Notice how I said every other week since it's an every other week show?
That's correct.
Yeah. So anyway, anything else you want to share with the listeners?
Not at all.
No, we're just done.
No, we're good.
So that's the end of the show, and we have nothing left to impart. Cheers. Oh, and be sure to subscribe and like this video.